Hi. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to optimize your chances to pass job interviews with high-performing companies and avoid stress and burnout in the process, right? So I've been analyzing some of the exchanges I had, both with good or candidates who passed interviews and candidates who weren't as successful in their interviews journey. So let me first start with the candidates who passed these interviews, something that I call good stress. Okay, so candidates who passed these interviews, I noticed that there was quite a significant amount of drama in our conversation. You know, we were not agreeing on everything. There was a fluid scheduling on short notice of these coaching sessions. There were various conversations via email. So it's not to say that our conversation didn't contain any stress, but I felt like there was always a benefit, a direct benefit for the candidate with respect to improving their chances, improving their interviewing skills from this conversation. You know, they were always focusing on things such as how to improve their stories, why wasn't their story the best one, or the best way to communicate their stories, how to improve their role play, and so on. We were almost never talking about what is a good way to improve their CV, or how to prep screening rounds, for instance, right? So there was a bit of drama, but there was drama with a quantifiable, with an end goal in mind, right? Also, these candidates scored extremely well on determination. They were extremely determined to pass these job interviews. Okay, for example, 15 coaching sessions and going through a 6-hour training program, Amazon one, in full, you know, those 15 coaching sessions almost on consecutive days, right? So they scored well on determination. Now, on the other side of things, for candidates who weren't as successful with these job interviews, I found that, you know, there was some sort of bad stress. Okay, they were more in like a survival mode with these interviews. Their exchanges with these candidates were pretty flat. Also, these candidates tended to be extremely agreeable on everything I'd say. Okay, so also determination was more of an impression for them. They thought, yes, I can do it. But when you looked at the results, they were having a hard time finishing at what they started. They didn't really enjoy role playing all that much because they felt, you know, they were some sort of half prepped, so to speak. And, you know, these candidates are also far more likely to overdose on AI for the purpose of job interviews. Okay, but the idea that I wanted to communicate here is that there's a huge difference in the way you approach these interviews. There's the survival mode, and then there's the thriving mode. Okay, if you think of passing interviews with fangs as a way to survive, in my opinion, you will experience a lot of stress and burnout in whatever you do, because it's that mentality of, you know, incremental gains step by step, and basically, you know, the risk of half-prepped syndrome is quite serious. This in contrast with the thriving mode. Right, with the thriving mode, where each step you take is outcome driven, right? You have an outcome for that step, be it your story bank, be it a role play session, and that brings you closer to your goal, right? But the point is that if you think like, hey, I'm going to thrive in my interview journey, you're far less likely to get burnout. Whereas when compared to a strategy such as you're in survival mode, right? I must survive this interview, right? So now I found that, you know, what if you cannot think like this? What if you cannot think like if you're going to thrive in your job interview, but you're more of a survivalist type of candidate? There are some, in my experience, there's been some changes that some of my clients made that enable them to become successful. Namely 3 of them. First would be, you could take a 1 year off. Okay, you could call it a gap year, or you may say you may be waiting for a better opportunity, or simply you could blame it on the job market. But taking some time off to reflect on your situation and come back stronger is something that I know previously worked. Okay. The second thing you could do if you are, more in a survival mode, so to speak, you could also consider lowering your standards and lowering your expectations for the purpose of these job interviews. You could, for instance, interview with less important companies, still high-performing companies, still high-paying jobs, but they're not, the fangs. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you need an intermediate step to get there. This is also quite common with my clients. And the third thing you'd want to consider, if you feel like you risk becoming a forever candidate, could be as simple as looking for something else, looking for a career change. Okay, so believe it or not, it's actually, I wouldn't say it's extremely common, but it does happen all the time for candidates to switch career trajectories from technical to non-technical roles and vice versa. Okay, so who knows, maybe you don't really enjoy what you're doing, and this could be a core source of stress and burnout for you. Maybe you'd want to go on something completely different where you would gain more incentive to prepare and to thrive in that specific role, right? But long story short, it's highly uncommon for candidates who've been successful through these journeys to suffer from extreme stress and burnout during these exchanges. And if you are in such a scenario, know that there's some solutions exist, and you may want to look elsewhere at having a more successful approach. Right? So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.